Another developing story we have been following since it happened. This story out of Russia. A Boeing 737 airliner has crashed while attempting to land at KAZAN airport in central Russia. It is believed that 44 people died. The flight from Moscow exploded when it hit the runway. According to the International Air Transit Association, Russia had one of the world's worst air traffic safety records in 2011. Here to talk more about the safety concerns surrounding this crash is Al Jazeera America's transportation contributor Todd Curtis. Mr. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, it's very early on, but some of what we are hearing is that perhaps this plane crashed on a second attempt to land, and the weather was very, very trying. It was bad weather. What does that tell you?
Well, it was early reports did say there was precipitation in the area, and like you said, multiple landing attempts. And this was also a nighttime landing. So those are definitely risk factors that could have played a role in this. But what isn't known right now is whether or not there are other issues going on. Were there navigational issues with the aircraft? Did the airport even have a working landing system in place for landing in poor weather? So this has to be resolved by the Russian authorities.
What can you add to what we're reporting about the poor safety record, aviation safety record in Russia? What more can you tell us about that?
Well, Russia, as you know, went through a lot of changes after the fall of the Soviet Union. And what you ended up having was a system where there are a lot of aircraft throughout Russia, the former Soviet Union, that would not be up to the standards that we have here in the U.S. or in Western Europe. That is, they were designed and certified under a completely different standard. And in some cases, some kinds of aircraft in Russia don't have the support that you would have from the companies that made them, that you would have for Boeing or an Airbus. Now, point of fact, this particular aircraft that crashed was a Boeing 737-500, and although that model is no longer in production, it's a model that's in use, in wide use around the world. So conceivably, there wouldn't have been any problem getting spare parts and that sort of thing for this aircraft. And there has been a previous crash of a 737-500 in the former Soviet Union. So at this point, it's very early to say whether or not there's something wrong with that particular model or whether there's some sort of pattern with this aircraft in Russia. But certainly,
no, go ahead. I apologize.
Well, certainly the past record of the former Soviet Union when it comes to air safety is a concern to many who fly there. But in general, the suggestion I give to people is if the airline you're flying is flying a Western-built aircraft, that is an Airbus or a Boeing, and they have a fairly large fleet, then their standards are pretty much what you would see in other parts of the world. This particular airline had a very small fleet of aircraft, only about a half dozen modern airliners of Airbus and Boeing manufacture. So it's unclear whether or not the airline itself may have had some issues when it came to maintenance and procedures.
Okay, one more question, kind of an offshoot of the fact that the safety record in Russia is so poor. How might that affect the investigation to find out exactly what went wrong? Would an investigation in Russia differ from an investigation in the United States?
Well, it would differ only in that, as per international agreement, when an accident happens on a domestic flight, it's that individual country's responsibility to run the investigation. But the usual procedure is the airline that's involved, the government that's involved, in this case Russia, the manufacturer, in this case Boeing, maybe even the engine manufacturer, which again would be a Western country, would be involved in the investigation. So there will be the kind of resources you would see in an NTSB type investigation. What may not happen is the results of that investigation may not be as open to the public as would an NTSB investigation. However, and this is a preliminary point here, it would appear that a son of the president of that Russian Republic, Tartarstan, was allegedly on the plane and may have been killed. So internally in Russia, there may be a political impetus to get to the bottom of this quickly.
Okay, and just to be clear, Al Jazeera has not confirmed that particular nugget of information. Todd Curtis, Al Jazeera's a transportation contributor, thank you so much. Another piece of information, though, that I do want to clarify, there were 44 people on the plane, 44 passengers that were killed, 6 crew members, bringing that awful number to 50 people killed in that plane crash. Todd Curtis, thank you so much.